And welcome back. We have a great session for you now. International cooperation, key to getting CCAM on roads around the world. We need global standards, joint approaches, an exchange of knowledge, experience and best practices. Well, the idea of this session is to learn about new policies and research activities in different regions of the world and to discuss the main benefits and future priorities for international cooperation. So let me introduce our panelists, all from countries well advanced in the world of connected and automated driving. First of all, we have Jane Lappin, who is from the USA. Hi, Jane. Jane is the chair of the Standing Committee on Vehicle Highway Automation in the Transportation Research Board. I think you used to work for Toyota, so we've got a bit of the public-private coming from you. And I guess it's quite early in the morning. What time is it? About 9 o'clock? No, 8:40.
8:45.
8:45. Yeah. Okay, not too bad then. It's okay. You've had your coffee and you're ready to go. We're also delighted to welcome Mr. Seigo Kuzumaki from Japan, who is the Program Director of the Strategic Innovation Program, Automated Driving for Universal Service, and also a Fellow of the Advanced R&D and Engineering Company, Toyota Motor Corporation. So you're wearing a private and a public hat in a way. And I know it's in the evening for you, I think about quarter to 10, is that right, in the evening?
Yeah, that's right.
I've been... In the break, I was trying to see what time it was at different parts of the world where all the speakers are. We're also now joined from Singapore by Mr. Lam Wee Shan, who is the Group Director of Technology and Industry Development at the Land Transport Authority. Hello to you. I saw at the most recent report from KPMG put Singapore top of the list in terms of countries ready for automated vehicles. So you are doing well. We're really looking forward to hearing what's happening in Singapore. Thank you. And Rita Excell from Australia, Executive Director of the Australian-New Zealand Driverless Vehicle Initiative. Lots of projects and automation going on in your part of the world. I think you get the prize for the latest. So it's 10:45, is that right for you?
That's correct, Kathy.
All right, well, thank you for staying up. You may be normally in bed by this time. And then from South Korea, we're delighted to be joined by Young Moon, who is Chief Director of the Department of National Transport Technology at the Korea Transport Institute. Hello to you. I know that South Korea are very ambitious in this domain. So we're really looking forward to hearing what's happening in South Korea. So I'm going to ask all of you to make a presentation for 10 minutes. Please try to be quite strict on your timing so that we leave plenty of time for our discussions. This is a slightly longer session than we've been having. We've got 90 minutes for this session. So 10 minutes really to give a sense of the key policies and the actions going on in your countries on connected and automated driving, and also really key to what we're going to be discussing, where you see the possibilities for international cooperation. So Jane Lappin in the US, maybe you would like to start.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Tom Elkim, for organizing this panel. Are my slides up? There we are. Great. I'm going to begin my overview of the automated driving activities in the US with the private sector, keeping my focus on the private sector activities, because I think this is the area where the US really leads in the world. While it was the DARPA challenges that kickstarted this current wave of AV development, it was Google's investment that created the real traction and competition across the tech and automotive industries. Today, 11-ish years after we first learned about Google's project, the US has a lot of AV activity on the private sector side. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the many issues where governments have a role working with industry to ensure a positive public impact. The EU, Japan, South Korea, Germany, the Netherlands, France, the UK, I'm sorry if I've left anyone else, many nations in the world have strong, well-funded, multi-sector research and demonstration projects that are helping them to make progress together as a civil society in these areas. For the US, I would say that one of our greatest strengths is in our investors, as our investors have funded, private investors, much of the growth and supported the risks of AV innovation. Next slide. I think the next slide should be a map, but perhaps I had trouble with my slides. So let's back up to the slide you had, and I'm going to talk for a moment with that slide up about the states. Because the US is a big market with different authorities at different levels, without any current unifying national legislation for testing and operating highly automated vehicles. We have a mix of safety authorities, with NHTSA regulating vehicle safety and the states regulating drivers, insurance, liability, vehicle registration, and public safety. If we were looking at the same slide together right this moment, you would see a map of the US with all of the states color-coded to indicate the different public legislation and regulations that have been passed state by state across the country, creating a patchwork of different testing regimes, creating a challenge for the innovators who need to run their vehicles on public roads. California was one of the first to pass regulations for road testing, and in keeping with their values, those regulations are fairly prescriptive. They were followed closely by Nevada, Arizona, and others around them. What's interesting is that while California's regulations are more prescriptive than, say, Nevada, Arizona, or Florida, both states with significant testing activity, California has the preponderance of AV companies testing on public roads. And now you can see in the slide that's in front of you, 56 different companies with highly automated vehicles in test on roads in California. This isn't counting an additional, I think, 6 we'll see on the next slide, who are testing in California without drivers in the vehicle. This may be the largest concentration of private companies anywhere in the world. Other states have a significant level of public road testing, including Michigan, Florida, Texas, Virginia, Arizona, and Nevada. But reflecting on the question Tom gave us about opportunities for international collaboration, I want you to notice how many non-US based companies are testing in California. Next slide, please. Great. This slide builds on the last with snippets from public websites that illustrate the range and global reach of private sector automated driving activities in the US. The 56 companies testing AVs on public roads in California logged nearly 2 million miles in 2020 with the pandemic. That's down from 3.8 million miles pre-pandemic, and I think we can safely anticipate a surge past 4 million miles and more companies on the road in 2021. 6 companies in California are testing without drivers. One of them is Nuro, a low-speed package delivery vehicle. Waymo One in Phoenix and Motional in Las Vegas are completing paid trips, paid taxi trips and level 4 vehicles with members of the public. Over 100,000 rides over several years by Motional in Las Vegas, exceeded by 1,000 to 2,000 trips per week from Waymo One, with a fleet of 300 vehicles in Greater Phoenix. Coming back to the national government, the US DOT recognized 10 proving grounds, 10 test facilities at the end of the Obama administration. I know these test beds had hopes for federally sponsored test bed programs, but with the change of government, no program was forthcoming. So we'll see what happens in the next few years. Next slide, please. I'm switching to focus to highlight three notable AV-related associations that have organized themselves to address vehicle and public safety, public acceptance and education, and the need for a national policy roadmap for automated vehicles. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation represents most all automotive companies with sales in the US, plus Intel, Texas Instruments, and Argo. They've developed this three-pillar, 14-point, four-year plan with the agreement of all their members. They hope to influence Congress, the US DOT, and of course NHTSA with this plan. I want to bring your attention to number 10 on the list of actions. Lead in international fora. This may refer to the work of the UNECE, but there are many other good opportunities for the auto industry, which is fundamentally global, to work across national borders with national governments in cooperation on shared issues like safety, cybersecurity, and many of the policy issues identified on slide 2. Next slide, please. The Automated Vehicle Safety Consortium of SAE ITC was created through agreement among Toyota, Ford, GM, Honda, Daimler, Volkswagen, Lyft, and SAE. Here we have international cooperation again. AVSC was created in 2018 or 2019 to begin the detailed work of developing industry consensus for level 4 and level 5 best practices. Their current publications are currently available on their website. Next slide, please. The Partners for Automated Vehicle Education, or PAVE, was initiated by several auto companies who were quickly joined by insurance companies, nonprofits, research institutes, and associations. There are over 70 members, a quarter of whom are NGOs. They sponsor weekly webinars on topics to inform the general public about the inner workings of highly automated vehicles. This is the third of 3 examples of US and global companies working together outside of government to address critical public safety challenges, public education and acceptance, and the need for a national plan for highly automated vehicles. The photo in the upper left of this slide shows Jamie Boone, Toyota Motor North America, Jade Hill, also of Toyota, Junko Yoshida, who's a journalist with muckrack.com, and Kelly Nantel from Amazon, from a recent PAVE panel. Next slide. I also want to bring your attention to activities, again, locally and privately organized with low-speed automated shuttles. This is a list of locally organized projects that were open to the public and in operation as of June 1, 2019. These projects are in addition to Federal Transit Administration, federal program, Accelerating Innovative Mobility. The funding for these projects, the mix changes from site to site, but it generally includes a mix of federal, state, local, and private funds. So until now, these slides have been organized to illustrate the breadth, the diversity, and the accomplishments of the private sector and local community in the United States. They also highlight the global scope of the companies who are testing and developing in the US. For want of time, I've not included the activities of commercial vehicle operators like TU Simple, based in Arizona, but there are many commercial vehicle companies testing L4 commercial trucks on public highways. While the US government, primarily the Departments of Transportation, Energy, and Defense, are investing in AV research, in pilots, and in the development of new safety regulations, the bulk of the activity, by far the largest amount of funding, is on the private side in the US. Next slide. I'm coming to the end of my 10 minutes, and I want to close by telling you that slides 10 through 23, which you'll have access to in the proceedings, cover the activities of the U.S. Department of Transportation, and they've been kindly provided by Kevin Dopart of the U.S. DOT for your reference after the panel. Kathy, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed, Jane. Very interesting, and to see the amount of activity that's going on from the private sector. Also interesting to hear about the organisation PAVE to inform the general public of the inner workings, you know, specifically for that. So we're very interested to hear that. I feel as though if I go to California, there won't be any vehicle on the road that's not part of one of these tests when you tell us that. But that's wonderful. Thank you so much. So let's now go to Japan, and let's hear from Mr. Kuzumaki. And if you would like to tell us what's happening in Japan and where you see, Mr. Kuzumaki, the possibility for more international cooperation. I think your microphone's not on, Mr. Kuzumaki.
Sorry. Yes, thank you very much for your kind introduction. My name is Naki, Program Director of SIP ADAS, or Automated Driving System for Universal Service. It's my great honor to have a chance to present our activity in Japan at EUCAD2021. Next slide, please. Japan has its particular challenge for digital transportation of manufacturing. Society 5.0 was proposed as a future society that Japan should aspire toward. Society 5.0 will be possible to achieve society that can both promote economic development and find solutions to the social problem by a high degree of convergence between cyberspace and physical space. Cross-Ministerial Strategic Innovation Promotion Program, called SIP, is a 5-year project, and the second phase of SIP has started since 2018. 12 projects are ongoing in order to realize Society 5.0. SIP aims to promote cross-sector and industry, academia, government collaboration, and intensive R&D from fundamental research to the practical and commercialization. Next slide, please. Now we are amid intense competition to realize and spread ADS as early as possible and as reasonable price as possible. At the same time, we have to cooperate in order to overcome the common hurdle, because ADS realization is a drastic change of driving subject from human driver to systems. That is to say, both competition and cooperation are important for ADS realization. In SIP ADAS, we tackle various issues such as R&D, regulation reform, public acceptance creation, international cooperation with government, industry, academia cooperation. Regarding technology, we focus on the cooperative themes, for example, establishment of the dynamic map, safety assurance, cybersecurity, and so on. Next slide, please. This picture shows the concept of dynamic map. Dynamic map consists of high definition of 3D map and dynamic data. This dynamic map database is thought to be useful not only for ADS, but also for all other vehicles and drivers on the road. As a result of first phase of SIP ADAS activity, Dynamic Map Platform Corporation was established in 2017. 6 map companies and 9 automakers invested in this company. DMP has released HD 3D map data of all exclusive motorway in Japan on commercial basis from 2018. Next slide, please. This chart shows our approach for implementation of the dynamic map database. In first phase of SIP, as I mentioned, we established the basic initiative of dynamic map and development HD 3D static map data. In second phase of SIP, now we are developing a dynamic traffic environment data, such as traffic signal information, merging assistance traffic information, lane level traffic jam information created by using vehicle proof data. We think that the interface of the dynamic map data should be standardized internationally. Next slide, please. We conducted effort in Tokyo waterfront area from November to 2019. We completed and finished the end of March 2021. We provide signal information from about 30 traffic lights by DSRT and traffic information on the main lane of expressway for merging accidents and so on. Total 29 entities, including OEMs, suppliers, venture companies, and university, participate in our effort. They contributed to promote harmonization and standardization. We got a good feedback from the participants regarding the effectiveness of signal information to ADS, format of the data, and so on. Interim report will be released the end of this year. Next slide, please. Safety is a critical and essential issue for ADS. In order to realize and spread ADS in the market, it is necessary for us to have a feasible methodology to assess the safety performance of the vehicles. SIP is working on the simulation for AD safety validation. The project is named DIVP. DIVP consortium is constructed from 8 companies and 2 universities, as you can see in this slide. This project focuses on the precise duplication from real to virtual and verification of the consistency between sensor model and real-world testing. Next slide, please. The VP scope covers especially physical model improvement, computing performances, and data accumulation utilization in trillion approach. Based on this approach, the IVP objectives are to define the open standard interface to establish reference platform with reasonable verification level, especially for sensor modeling, and to establish the environment and sensor pair model-based approach for validation and verification reality. Our purpose is contribution to the AD safety assurance as methodology platform. So we think that international cooperation for common use is very important. Next slide, please. This slide shows a physical model framework. We now making a simulation model through the procedure of the system identification, simulation modeling, experimentation, correlation, and gap analysis. Basic static and dynamic verification of modeling has already been conducted at the laboratory level and at the proving ground level. So now we are trying to establish the model of real-world traffic environment in Tokyo waterfront area FOT. Next slide, please. Another example for our activity on safety is cybersecurity. In connected era, we think that the cyber attacks to the vehicle will become a biggest critical issue for OEM worldwide. Currently, new methods and techniques for cyber attack are introduced continuously. All after-sales vehicles are under threat of the new cyber attacks. Recently, intrusion detection system, or IDS, are becoming popular as a measure against a new cyber attack for after-sales product. There are many components and solutions of IDS by various vendors in the market. And generally, it is difficult for a user to find which IDS is best or enough. So we try to establish the evaluation method for IDS components solution provided by the various security vendors from the viewpoint of OEMs. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, both competition and cooperation are important for ADS realization. So we think that international harmonization and standardization is also very important. Now we are sharing information with EU projects such as Hadrian, HeadStart, and so on. And we also started collaborative research under the scheme of German-Japan Research Cooperation on CAD. Last November, we held SAP ADAS Workshop 2020, which is 7th workshop, and it was delivered over the web. Total over 1,000 people, including about 140 from overseas, participating in our workshops. Input by experts from overseas was very useful and stimulating. This year, we will hold SAP ADAS Workshop 2021 in 9 to 10 November. So please join us. And please check out our activity on our website too. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much. Interesting to already get an idea of how you think that international cooperation is needed in certain areas, and interesting to hear, you know, you're talking about cyber attacks being a critical issue for OEMs, and that's perhaps something we can talk about later. Thank you so much. Mr. Lam from Singapore, will tell us more about what's happening in Singapore.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I have my slides, please?
Yes.
Well, thanks for having me here, and I'm going to give you a very short summary of what we are doing in Singapore and some of the international collaborations. Next slide, please. Well, I just want to give some context. Singapore is a small country. As you know, we are an island state, and we don't have federal and different province and all those, but part of it, being small market, we look at and we ask ourselves, what is the vision for urban mobility? There are the various challenges listed here, and one of these is land constraint. Another is a very tight labor market. And so we have for many years always been talking about having a car like Singapore, where people choose to walk, cycle, and ride public transport. But we believe that autonomous vehicles still have a very important role to play, especially in the urban mobility context. And so with that, the next slide, please. Well, why autonomous vehicles? Then based on the constraints and all those that I share, we pick up three. First, in terms of deploying autonomous vehicles as public transport, not quite private transport, we hope that we could still move people around very effectively given a small land take. Half of our bus captain is actually from the foreign countries. And why is because we have difficulties getting local people to be our bus captains, and we are relying on technology. And whatever technology we could leverage on to help address this tight labor market. Obviously, we hope that it could also improve road safety, especially because many of our road incidents are caused due to human error. Next slide, please. With that in mind, we started a committee on autonomous road transport for Singapore. We recognize that within the public sector, we are not very much attuned to the cutting edge and the fast development of emerging technology like autonomous vehicles, AIs, and all those. And so when we formed this committee to help guide the roadmap, we are mindful to get not just from the transport side, but within the government agencies, land planners, because for us to deploy autonomous vehicles right, our land planning has to get it right. And our land planning is a long-term planning process. And so better to start earlier and later. We also include our research institutions, we include our economic agencies, because we hope that through this, we also create good and healthy economic activities. From the private cooperation sides, we are mindful to include motor OEMs, telcos, tier 1 suppliers, as well as the schools. Next slide, please. This is the roadmap of how we see autonomous vehicles being deployed in Singapore. We believe that at this stage, the technology is still maturing, but there is good scope. Phase 1, where we have individual trials, test bedding in certain parts of Singapore, is something that we have been doing for a couple of years, and we are putting together a town deployment in a limited fashion. The town deployment, the limited fashions would help inform us what kind of parameters would we need in order to deploy it at scale. And that's why when you look at this roadmap, we didn't quite put a time frame when we enter into phase 3. A lot of it depends on how the town deployments work. We are also mindful that the enablers are equally important. Having a good framework to support autonomous vehicles by way of regulations. When there is an absence of international standards at this point in time, we'll put forth a national standards that guide the stakeholders what we are thinking of. But to me, the most important enablers is the public acceptability. And why is because for us, the deployment of autonomous vehicles, we hope it could be largely in the area of public transport or shared transport. And if our people from all walks of life is not keen to take autonomous vehicles, then all this effort is not going to take shape. Next slide, please. With this in mind, we started a number of trials. And the number of autonomous vehicles and deployment areas have grown over years. We started with zoning it in a mixed traffic environment, light business district, not the densely kind of populated, heavy traffic kind of city centers, but more a light kind of business district. And then we slowly scale. Up to this stage, we have almost more than a third of the Singapore being opened up for trials. And there are a couple of different autonomous vehicle stakeholders deploying their vehicles here. Next slide, please. The next two slides, I would focus on the different threats. And broadly, we have 4. 2 on people mover and 2 on non-people mover. For the people mover part, I think it's not surprising that since we are focusing on public transport, then we are looking at fixed and scheduled services where big buses taking standing commuters as well as seated passengers, how we move them from the transport nodes or our subway stations to their destinations, be it office, be it home, and how could we deploy the bigger vehicles in an autonomous mode. Not forgetting that, especially during the off-peak period, we still would like to see point-to-point mobility that is largely on demand. And think of it like a bit of a robo-taxis kind of deployment, and that we have a couple. The next will be the non-people mover, where we look at increasingly autonomous vehicles that deploys on path. Next slide, please. Increasingly autonomous vehicles or robots moving on paths and delivering goods and so on. Can I have the next slide? Yes, thank you. And increasingly, we also want to try out having utility vehicles on autonomous mode. And for us, if we could move the non-people mover vehicles off the peak period, it is indirectly increasing our road capacity. Next slide, please. We are entering into phase 2. We are preparing for the pilot deployments. We zone 3 areas. Pongo is a brownfield residential site. That essentially is a town that if we successfully deploy autonomous vehicles, we believe that we can then deploy into other existing towns. Tenga is a greenfield. We are doing the town planning. We're starting to sell the private housings. And that is where there is more opportunity for us to tweak whether this is infrastructure or the overall layout. Jurong Innovation District is more sparse. It is catering to light industries, and we're trying to find out a different concept of deployment for autonomous vehicles. What these 3 areas would form are templates that we can refer to if we want to scale very quickly in phase 3. Next, please. So back to the roadmap, now I want to talk a little bit about the enablers. And next slide, please. One of the areas that we are definitely looking at is ensuring autonomous vehicles as safe. The next slide, please. And so we have this Center of Excellence in Testing and Research of Autonomous Vehicles, where together with IHLs and testing houses, we develop testing protocols. We are one of the few jurisdictions, I believe, that believe in testing the autonomous vehicles before we allow them to deploy on public roads in mixed traffic environment, and partially because of the expectations of our people but also because as a type approval kind of regime, we are more comfortable if we get to test the autonomous vehicles in a certain way. But that is also very helpful because as we are testing and as regulator, we are able to balance between helping to the developers to push ahead while managing some risks at the same time. Next slide, please. Increasingly, we are also developing protocols for testing of autonomous vehicles on path. And even last year and currently during COVID-19, we are still pushing ahead on this. Next, please. We are mindful that we are a small market, and eventually we will certainly look towards to embracing the international standards. But in the meantime, because of our ambitions to deploy autonomous vehicles in town areas, we develop our national standards, or what we call tech reference. This is an effort where we bring together all the stakeholders, not just government officials, but industry players, academia, where we look at different areas, basic behaviors, safety, cybersecurity, and also the data type. Next, please. We also work very closely with like-minded authorities. We participate in international fora, sharing our experience, and also learning from many others. Next, please. We also have regular bilateral, multilaterals, engagement, information sharing with like-minded countries and authorities. And we benefit a lot from that. And we also would like to do our part and share what we have learned. And with that, we organize some forums to share what are some of the best practices that we have. Next slide, please. For example, 2019, when Singapore had the opportunity to host the ITS World Congress, we share and we put together quite a good group of stakeholders to share their experience. That include our new union leaders, where we also work very closely with. My last slide is on public acceptability. And these, whenever we have chance, we always want to engage the public, share with them what is autonomous vehicles technology, as well as also what kind of concept operations we are thinking of and how government can play a role. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Lam. I love the phrase "car light Singapore." Very interesting, but good. You know, interesting to see the emphasis on public transport, and also, like everybody else, working so hard on public acceptability. Really big issue. Thank you very much indeed. So Rita, Excell Australia, but I think you're working with Australia and New Zealand together, I think. So give us an idea of what's happening there.
Very much, Kathy, and thanks for the opportunity. You know, we've heard from lots of those speakers previously, and Australia has very strong connections into a lot of those countries, and we really congratulate them on the work that they do that helps us all to sort of float to the top around understanding this sector better. So my first slide, please. So this is the Australia and New Zealand Driverless Vehicle Initiative. We go to the next slide. This is who we are in a snapshot. It's 150 organisations, and we're very proud that we were established in 2015. So we're one of the fastest growing industry bodies in Australia. And these organisations come together really initially to raise awareness and to help grow our understanding of the opportunities, particularly around safety, but also economic benefits that investment and development of driverless technology can have to a country like Australia. We are a large country, but a very small market. And that poses some of its own difficulties as far as really attracting international investment. But what we're seeing is that through this collaboration, through this wide ecosystem, we're seeing that companies are able to collaborate together on projects and share lessons learned. Like the other speakers have spoken about, we have a strong focus on community awareness and growing acceptance. And one of the big key outcomes of our project is to run a longitudinal survey on community attitudes in Australia and New Zealand regarding trust and things like willingness to pay. So we've been running that for the last 5 years, and we're just about to finalise our data collection for this year. And we've had a number of questions on COVID and the impact that COVID may have had on community acceptance and concerns. So next slide, please. So this is the activity across Australia and New Zealand. I think what this slide shows, it's a busy slide, but what it indicates is there is activity right across Australia and New Zealand in multiple areas. So there is a lot of activity happening. Our key, where we believe we are world leaders, is in the commercial deployment of driverless trucks on mine sites and that industrial application. And I'll talk more about that in a later slide where we talk about the use case for Australia and New Zealand. So next slide, please. So this is the use cases, and we've heard about the robo-taxis. We hear a lot about testing around deliveries of goods, where we think that Australia has a unique opportunity and also a market advantage is around the off-road in the unsealed road sector. Particularly with the journey of the last 10 years around automation of our mine sites and making them some of the safest mines in the world. So next slide, please. So this shows you the activity. And when we talk about off-road, we also talk off the road. So we've got Australian companies looking at delivery of medical goods using drones and drone delivery. And I think there's a lot to be learned that, you know, the regulations around these sorts of new transport modes need to be considered. We're also seeing lots of investment in automated rail lines. It seems like it should be an easy thing. You know, it's on a track, you should be able to automate it. But it is very complex. It's a very complex nature. What we're finding is there's huge opportunity for near-term deployment of technologies that may not be mature enough to go on busy public roads, but may be able to be fit for purpose in places like in places like ports, where there is, you know, you can have a much more regulated movement of vehicles and also goods. And there is lots of tracking that already happens around goods and containers. So these are very early use cases. And, you know, in Australia, we are recognised as having the most autonomous mine trucks in the world. Most of the large mining company truck providers have got a huge presence in Australia and are developing and working with our mining companies, our big mining companies. We've seen that not take a step back during COVID. In fact, it's advanced. And we've even seen some light vehicles being deployed on mine sites. We hear a lot about the benefits of automation and the reduction in crashes and the safety benefits. And I was at a forum not long ago where there was a question about, have we realised those safety benefits yet, or have we seen that safety dividend? Particularly in these industrial locations, the large mine sites, all of the companies that have deployed these technologies are reporting significant safety enhancements. And of course, great investment, but great return on investment through productivity gains. And the other part that's very interesting to understand is that these companies have reported that there have been no net job losses. So people have either been redeployed and into the company in other roles, or they've taken on and embraced the new opportunities from getting out of a truck and actually getting into a control centre. And the sector really started as sort of remote monitoring. And now we're seeing that we've got major monitoring centres located in Western Australia, monitoring even some space station, so working with some international partners on those. So that expertise is very mature in Australia. So next slide, please. We talk about, and obviously this forum is about international collaboration, and here are some of those from a government-led collaboration. So we are part of the WP1 in Australia. We're also part of WP21 and been active participants in WP29 for many years. We have an exchange with Michigan. We also have good connections with many of the countries represented here, formally and informally. And we work very closely from an ADVI perspective. We work very closely with our Department of Industry, Trade and Investment, because we have lots of companies wanting to understand what opportunities there are for their products in Australia, and also to understand how they connect with business. And that is part of the ADVI activities, connecting business to business and business to government to understand how you can operate and work in Australia. So next slide, please. So the National Transport Commission is really the coordinating body around the regulations for delivering or commercialising the automated vehicle opportunity. And I think you, Kathy, mentioned the KPMG report, and yes, Singapore was #1, but Australia was actually #1 around the regulations and preparing regulations. So we're really proud of that. Really think that that is a key pillar and a framework. And this slide is taken from the National Transport Commission's strategic plan, and it talks about how we have a coordinated approach to regulation of heavy vehicles of our transport system. And my major partner, the Australian Road Research Board, is identified as an independent research organisation that's formed to help governments and industry transition to the automation and driverless sector. So I think from an Australian perspective, we already have a structure that allows national consistency across the sector. So next slide, please. And international collaborations are key. We're very pleased to have Volvo Car Australia as our major partner, and has been our foundation partner. In fact, we demonstrated their technology back in 2015 for the first time in the Southern Hemisphere. At that time, that was lane keeping assist and adaptive cruise control. We had to close the road to show that demonstration. So it was, if you think about that and how far we've come and what's happening in the US and all over the world now with the testing that's taking place. We have really strong connections into the United States and to the UK, and also companies like Navia and EasyMile in particular have got national headquarters in Australia in different forms. So we're really pleased to also be able to say that two of our companies that are major partners who were doing most of their work overseas in using world-renowned company who had very little traction in Australia because there wasn't a lot of activity in Australia when we first started. Now we're seeing that these companies, Coda, Wireless and Baraha, they're actually doing a lot of work in Australia, and through opportunities that come out of the COVID and broken supply chains, we're seeing much more activity happening with Australian companies working on Australian projects. So we're really pleased to have Australian companies part of our international linkages. So next slide, please. We talk about cooperation and competition, and I think I agree, competition is a good thing, but what we don't want is a lot of duplication, and particularly a lot of making the same mistakes. And I think there's nowhere around the world that's more competitive than the test beds. And for Australia, we have test beds, multiple test beds all over Australia. We have one that's a government-owned and government-run test bed, and we're very pleased that that's in our city where we're based, and we think that there's a huge opportunity, like with Singapore and the Citrans, to actually have a government-run facility where people can, once we've got standard test procedures, can go and get their technology certified and approved for the whole operation in that state, and we hope across Australia. But with competition, there's also cooperation, and we have got very good connections with a lot of the test beds globally. And I think Jane would be aware that TRB was putting together an international testbed sort of committee, and I think that be good to be connected to that as well. So next slide, please. Again, the most important thing, the critical thing, we can have the best technology. If we don't have community acceptance and we have community concerns, then we will have a very difficult time getting widespread deployment. And this is something I think is a huge opportunity for us to really coordinate and see what our respective communities are concerned and thinking about. And cyber seems to be one of the key issues that people are concerned and maybe not getting as much awareness of the work that's going on. So next slide, please. So there are some regulatory gaps. I think these exist globally, and these are the areas that I think that there's huge opportunities for us to work together on, to collaborate, and so that we can get some consistency across how this technology is deployed anywhere in the world. Next slide. That's the end of my slide. I think I look forward to the discussion from the panel. Thanks, Kathy.
Very much indeed. Very interesting to hear what's going on in the off-road world, and the fact that you already seeing safety dividends in the mines. I mean, that those sort of test cases are just invaluable, aren't they? So we will probably ask you some more about those regulatory gaps where you see potential for collaboration in a moment. So thank you very much indeed. So now, finally, from South Korea, Mr. Moon, tell us what's happening in South Korea. You're in Seoul, I presume.
Yeah, I'm in Sejong, new city, the government city.
Ah.
Okay. I'm just talking about connected automated driving system and smart mobility. What happened in Korea and what's going on for the future. And we are now targeting what is the sustainable transport for our next generation, not for me, okay? It's more safe and more accessible, more affordable, and also the more typically focusing on environmental friendly, okay? So we have to reduce our congestion and road accident, and also emissions and air pollutions to improve our health problems, okay? How we can make it? We have to reduce our travel need by driving alone. And also we have to shift to the sustainable transport mode, which they include electric vehicle on hydrogen, whatever the case may be, to improve efficiency for all transport mode. Next, please. Next slide. Okay, so what we have now in infrastructure, we have already, you can see here, the vehicle and ICT connectivity, which is called VTX. The system's already on in our infrastructure. And typically the national road and expressways, and they already have almost, in the expressway, they invest a lot of money, from the government side, and then the vehicles have some the information sharing while driving on road to the infrastructure, to the other vehicle, and to the systems. Okay, next, please. As you can see here, we call CITS, cooperative ITS, under the TC204, the architecture that we have 4 major stations here, the vehicle and roadside, and also the center, and as well as the mobile device, which is personal the stations. We have the 4 major IT stations that they connected together directly, and then we trying to have get a lot of data from the each stations, and then we have to deal with this kind of data to improve our mobility, the efficiency and safety, and the environment friendly. Next, please. So this is the government-driven project from the Ministry of the Transport. They spend a lot of money from now on, as well as from the early the 2017. Some each city they compete together to get this project from the ministry, and then the competition is very strong between the cities to get this project. Okay, so which means they install for all the VTX infrastructure on road, including city road and also the urban road as well. Next, please. So what we called, if we invest this kind of infrastructure, that we called infrastructure to be digitalized. We call digitalization of infrastructure or digital infrastructure. So the conventional infrastructure, we have a lot of ITS systems already on, but we say it's going to be a little bit old, the systems and technology, that we have to some update or revise the CITS technology to be to make it more the efficiency for all the vehicles and the other the peoples, which is going to be challenges over the resilient the investment for the environment for transport systems. Okay, next please. Next slide. Okay, now we have previous one, please. Previous one. Okay, so our government they already have the huge project, just like some SIP ADVI in Japan, 4 ministry getting together for the $1 billion US dollar project for 7 years, the targeting level 4. Okay, but this is typical tracks of the two systems. Is one is targeting for passenger vehicle with high speed and the taking the speedway for level 3 and level 4 until the 7 years from now on. And the next one is some the public and shared the shuttles are running without any drivers on road, which we call automated shuttle with low speed, and they are typically moving on the urban area. We say low speed and urban mobility. This is what we are trying to now to make some improvement. And then for next 7 years, the 4 ministry, including Ministry of Transport and Ministry of ICT and Science Technology and Ministry of Commerce and Industrialization and the National Police Agency. The 4 ministries getting together to take the collaboration, the project for level 4, the automated vehicles. Next, please. And why we need ITS infrastructure to be based on. That is, the level 3, we have CITS is going to be, the support for digital infrastructure, but the automated ITS we call, the big data and the AI technology to be merged together. That will be only going to the logical infrastructure to be come of it. Okay, next please. So the focusing on the infrastructure, what we need is one is physical one. We have to improve our physical infrastructure, and the second one is digital infrastructure. We need the digital signage and every the digital information, and also the VTX, the communication technology and IoT, and also the HD map, whatever, and the positioning, high accuracy. And also the third one is logical infrastructure, utilizing the big data, and we have the management, and control things is to be the cutting edge, and we have to to take care of level 0, level 1, and level 2, and level 3, and level 4 the vehicles moving together simultaneously on the road, then how we make our the traffic, the movement is the smoothing on the in the vehicle. That's we are targeting on next version of traffic management and control systems. Next, please. Okay, I'm going to skip this one. This is, I already mentioned that. Next, please. Yes, I'm going to skip on. Okay, next, please. Now, the issue of the VTX. This is what we need to the international collaboration. Okay, so we don't really to take the way which one is better. This kind of technology, some the VTX by the DSRC technology and VTX based on the cellular one. We don't know exactly yet because the 5G is still struggling to make some sort of consensus to getting the application on road exactly. Okay, next please. Okay, this is what we need. Okay, so for connected automated driving, we have to VTX infrastructure implemented on road and vehicles and peoples and center everything to be connected. So in the case, who is going to pay that? Who is going to pay the investment? Who take the authority of the data? So this is big issue in Korea, and I also I'm saying this is a big issue in the United States and European countries together. This is what we need: international collaboration and some sort of competition we need. But typically, international collaboration, the cooperation need as to making kind of internet standard, whatever the case may be. Next, please. Next slide. Okay, running. Okay, this is smart mobility in smart cities. I understand you recognize something from the Korea. We have two the major project of smart city. One is in Sejong, which I living in, and one is in Busan. Two cities have the smart city national project, and they are targeting on the smart mobility with the connected automated driving and digital infrastructure. Okay, and next, please. And this is one of the smart city project in Sejong. And also new government, the complex city. My institute is also located at the same site. And the Sejong City plan, they want to introduce or implement more than 200 urban connected automated shuttle in the city, whole cities, and then they want the people not to drive their car all the day, but people encouraged to take this kind of shuttle, the moving to the short distance, the last mile or first mile. That's the reason why we want to decrease our the passenger the vehicle needs and the demand sharply down to the less than 20%. This is now more than 50% of the utilization of the passenger car. We have to reduce our the people's not driving their passenger car. We want to reduce up to 20%. Okay, of that, and more than 70 or 80% will be the provided by public and shared and automated shuttle and the personal mobility together, which means we want to target carbon-free city, and we want to target digital infrastructure city, and we want to target some the electric and the automated vehicle city, and we want to target for the human-oriented the space the city the whole in the whole city side. Okay, next please. Next slide. Okay, what to be issued for previous one, please. Previous one. Okay. to be issued for the international collaboration or cooperation. This is the infrastructure for connected automated driving systems. We need, the physical, digital, and logical, and then, some international, some technology to be the merged together for how we can improve our physical, digital, and logical infrastructure, and also the big data and AI for improve the traffic management and control systems. One more thing is the VTEX for the infrastructure is driven by public DSRC, or is it driven by cellular from the private side? What's going to be dominate or shared? Or we have to have some kind of a hybrid the utilization, and then we have to pay attention to who's going to invest to VTEX infra, and who pays this kind of the charges, and then we have to take care of these kind of issues, and the internationally these issues to be addressed for the make the international collaboration and cooperation. Okay, next please. Thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much indeed. And so just as in Singapore, wanting to reduce the number of cars by 20%, so very ambitious projects ahead there in South Korea. So thank you very much indeed. Let me just ask you now, some of you, to give a sort of sense of how any international collaboration has already happened. And maybe if you want to also sort of start to explore where collaboration and cooperation is going into competition. There's a fine line between the two, isn't there? But I mean, for instance, you mentioned in Australia the idea that in terms of regulation, there were gaps where you felt there should be more international cooperation. So Rita, give us a bit more information on that, and whether you feel that there's other areas where already international cooperation has helped.
Definitely. As I said, we're part of the UNECE. Australia is a member of the WP1, which focus on the safety element, and WP29 around the vehicles. But I think it's really critical that we understand the liability and the responsibility, where that sits and where that lies. And I think we've touched on about data as well, and access to vehicle generated data. How that happens. I think these are two really critical things, and they're actually intertwined, because we can't really work out and determine liability if we don't have access to the right data to be able to do that. And cars are becoming more complex systems, and data, because of the risk to cybersecurity, is being locked down much more. So I think that's something that not one country could probably do on their own. It's something that has to happen as a collective, working with our industry partners, our traditional, vehicle manufacturers, but also the new players. I think that one would be strength in collaboration. And, Singapore, with their technical reports that they've put together and the way that they've worked through that, it's a model as well to consider of how that collaborative approach and also the impacts and having the workshops that we've been invited to as well around getting the international input into that.
And thank you, Mr. Kuzumaki. In Japan, you mentioned that human factors, safety, cybersecurity, all areas where international collaboration is needed. Have you already been working internationally and had results from what you've learned from other countries?
Yeah, we now discussed with German about the cybersecurity and safety assurance, but this is just a starting point. So now we share the information about our activity, and we how to say, have a consensus that the safety or security is very important for ADS. So we should cooperate or collaborate with them.
And what about in the United States, Jane Lappin? Where do you see, I mean, because you're talking a lot more about private activities in the US, maybe is there lesser of an appetite to collaborate?
Thanks, Kathy. I should reveal that I have a 25-year career with the U.S. Department of Transportation before going to Toyota. And in that position, helped to organize global collaborative platforms on automated vehicle and smart transportation research. Coincidental with organizing alongside with TRB global symposia, annual global symposia, where we convene the world, much as EUCAD does and SIP-ATIS does. We convene the world, 23 countries, each summer in July, and have found that that meeting, which is not a government-sponsored meeting, but again, in the civil society side, Transportation Research Board is a non-government organization. It's a very large transportation research community. As an independent platform, it's a very it's an open, collaborative, accepting, embracing way to both collaborate on our shared issues, and I put safety assurance at the top, but also to compete, you know, to show the flag. And for our private companies, not strictly the US, it's a global platform to be able to talk about their latest innovations, and in particular, how those innovations support social values and equity.
But in the end, it is a fiercely competitive area, isn't it? I mean, we were talking in our last panel about sovereignty, and in the end, you know, different regions of the world are looking to be leaders in this area. And so there is that line that will come where competition means that collaboration cannot happen. Where is that line?
If that's a question to me, then it's certainly with the IP, the intellectual property within the vehicles, within the systems. But there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for industry to put that aside, to focus on shared values in cooperation with the governments and with the public, so that we all gain experience with these innovations. We all understand better how to work with them for the future, how to integrate them, not just the business model integration for equitable service, but also the pragmatic integration of these particular driving profiles among human drivers on public roads. So we have many levels and opportunities to harmonize that in no way interfere with a company's capability to compete.
Right. Mr. Lam in Singapore, you talked about your ambitions to deploy meant that you set your own national standards. I mean, you felt you were leading the way. But does that mean that you are less interested in international cooperation because you want to, you're way ahead of the game and you can go your own way, particularly because you're a small country?
I definitely don't think that we can just do everything on our own. I think being a small country, we have the opportunity to be nimble and in a way to rally the different government agencies and stakeholders in the country together to quickly come up with the national standards or what we call the tech reference. But that is to enable us to deploy as soon as we could. But we are also mindful that we are a small market. The motor manufacturers, they are not going to develop the autonomous vehicles just for our country. They will look at the global market and they will want to make sure that their vehicles are able to deploy in many regions. So I see actually many areas that we can collaborate. Safety is paramount. I think this is common to all regions. I think this is an area that we can collaborate. There are different regions that is tackling the challenges. For Singapore, we have lots of rains, and when we have rain, it's heavy downpour, and that's where LiDAR doesn't work very well. And so in our research work in doing this is an area that we could, we could help export, or we could share what are the work that is done here. But likewise, there are many countries looking at, say, snow that is equally challenging for LiDAR. So there are areas, and in fact, quite a lot of areas that we will collaborate. So back to the standards, I would say that the point is we are looking forward to the international standards, but while that will take some time, we want to go ahead, and hence we have our national standards. Thank you.
So when you look at Europe and the European Union, do you see things that interest you? Do you see elements that are happening here in Europe that you could learn from?
Oh, certainly. I think one area that, in fact, I've been talking to some of the counterparts, be it from UK, Germany, or Netherlands, for example, is liability framework. And we Commonwealth countries where we have similar regulatory structures. And so these are areas that, as for example, some of the countries look at liability, we can closely collaborate. Why? Is because many of the insurers, they are global players, and they may not be looking at the innovative products in all regions. And when they develop that with certain data from one region, that's where we can benefit from it. So that is just one example that I would see. Public acceptability, I think all of us talk about that. I think that's key. While that is unique to the culture, to how we deploy it in our own country, but I think there are similarly a lot of areas that we could compare notes and see how we could engage our different stakeholders to get the autonomous vehicles deployment going.
And Mr. Moon, maybe I could ask you the same sort of questions. I mean, you talked about the need for international standards. Is that really the main thing, or are we talking technology as well that there can be an exchange of thoughts and ideas on?
Right. The international standard is very important in the connected automated driving. It's just in case of automated vehicle, we don't deal with international standard very well. But we're trying to see this is not only the automated vehicle. If we see this one is kind of a system, the infrastructure and the vehicle and peoples and the other the things has to be they merged together. We call this connected automated driving systems. So that's why the global market, including European Union and America, and also this Africa and the Asia Pacific, they have to get some kind of standardized, some the data structure or some kind of software structure. They have to make it. So that's why we don't with kind of sensor technology, whatever the case may be. We don't deal with kind of the cutting edge technology for kind of the vehicle hardware or something. We just deal with kind of the interface between the data and some kind of the management system, some kind of regulatory and some kind of safety issues. We have to deal with all together in an international standard. There's a reason why this international standard is very, very important from the beginning of the project started. Okay, and then in case of in Korea, we deal with all this kind of international standard from the beginning of the project started, as well as we targeting this kind of international standard to be harmonized in the worldwide, including TC22, TC204, and the TC268, whatever the case may be. From the actually year 2025, there will be on actually, some on the table for discussion of international standard.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. Let's take some questions from the audience now. There's a question here about infrastructure, saying in terms of infrastructure supporting to extend the operational design domains, do you recognise any factors that make this collaboration easier or more difficult to implement in your country or your world region? So if you're talking about extending the operational design domains, who should I bring in on this? Who would like to answer this question? Maybe in the US, Jane?
You know, there was a glitch in the sound, and I didn't hear you read the question. I'm sorry.
About the infrastructure supporting, enabling to extend the operational design domains. Do you recognise any factors that make this collaboration easier or more difficult to implement in your country?
I'd like to pass on that.
What about anyone else? No, that's fine. You don't have to answer any. Would anyone else like to take that question?
Maybe I can have a go on the question.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the Singapore context, especially when we're looking at public transport, if you remember the two tracks I mentioned on the People's Mover, we have fixed and scheduled services. And under the fixed and scheduled services, because the route is predetermined based on our bus planning team, we can then consider whether we can use the infrastructure as a way to push the deployment ahead. And well, the operating design domain could be one that could help us support, say, for example, half of the bus route, and the other bus of the bus route, maybe not quite, but with enablers like infrastructure, like maybe even in a way good maps and good traffic conditions, environments, factors or informations that we can provide. That would help push the envelope a little bit without compromising the safety. But I think we believe that these should be done in stages, and safety is still paramount, because overall, if there's any nasty incidents, well, that will set back the national initiative by a lot.
Right. Jane, there is a question for you, which is very straightforward. It's about testing in different types of environment and weather conditions other than California. Are the big companies doing this rather than just concentrating in certain areas? What is the current situation on that?
I don't. I know that there is testing underway in adverse weather conditions, for example, in Michigan, and in the private test beds where the conditions can be controlled. I don't think, and someone may correct me, I don't think that we have public road testings in adverse weather with higher levels of automation.
And the fact that you said, sorry.
No, I can come back to the question about infrastructure challenges in the US. I was just reflecting, listening to Lee talk, and thinking that really the greatest challenge in the US is the lack of a more comprehensive infrastructure funding legislation. And that once we as a nation can pass a substantial bill that provides an income stream to support repair and maintenance, good repair and maintenance for all drivers, not just the privileged automated vehicles, we would have the opportunity to move forward in a more AV-focused investments.
You mentioned, Jane, that about the different testing regimes in different states, and that is an issue here in the European Union as well, in different member states. Is that a big hurdle? Is that a big problem in terms of the development of automated driving in the States?
I don't think it's a big problem at this very moment when we're largely testing, but it's a huge obstacle looking ahead for vehicles that need to be able to operate across state lines. I mean, ultimately, a lack of harmonization globally will be an obstacle. But in the near term, as we come closer to licensing and creating a public legislative framework for automated vehicles, we have to be able to operate across state lines without shifting. You know, can you imagine downloading different algorithms, enacting different chipsets as you cross from one state line to the next? It would be impossible.
Which is, of course, the same situation here in Europe. Yes, thank you. A question here about, maybe I could give this one to Mr. Kuzumaki, asking about saying, yes, of course, safety is really important, but what about the potential role of automated driving and connected driving on the climate issues? How important is that in Japan as a factor to push forward the idea of connected and automated driving?
In Japan, we have a lot of climate disaster. For example, the typhoon or the overflood. So I think that the information of the climate is very useful for the of course, for automated driving and also the vehicle on the road, every vehicle on the road. So anyway, the automated and connected vehicle is, when we realize that CAD is a key to how to use the information about the, ODD or climate or congestion or accident, such kind of information we can utilize the all safety on the road. So I think that it's very important for not only for automated driving but also the all vehicle.
Right, thank you. Did anyone else want to come in there? No, I can't. You're just sort of little dots on the top of my screen, so I can't see if you're even putting your hand up. There's a question here about, it says in Europe, the person, it's Vaclav Jurovsky who's sent the question. In Europe, I'm missing the realization of real scientific, interdisciplinary, in-depth feasibility study of AV or CCAM and their meaningfulness in all environments. Is anything like that being performed in other world locations? What about in Australia, Rita? Because you've done so much testing, you're saying off-road, in the mines, and you know, is that replicable in other environments?
I think it's moved much further than testing. It's in commercial deployment in those industrial applications, both on the road, on the surface mines, and also the underground mines. And it has created an improvement in safety, as I've mentioned, but also in the quality of work and the quality of that the job in those sectors. I think the interdisciplinary aspect of it is one that really needs to be worked on, but it's as we transition from where we are, where we understand the capabilities of the technology for particular applications, as we move gradually into other areas. And I think one of the areas that is a real opportunity, and we hear it reported about, but we hear very little about activity and investment in it, is how this technology can be adapted to help people living with a disability. And so one of the biggest concerns that we have is that we will replicate the errors of how we design these vehicles currently that are not accessible for people who are living with a disability, whether it's cognitive or physical. So I think, those are some of the key learnings that I think need to be translated into these interdisciplinary areas. And it is a focus maybe that the commercial players that are looking at robo-taxis and early commercialization of mass markets might not be having as big a focus on, and maybe that is a strong role for government to lead, demonstration projects or pilot projects specifically targeting that sector. But yes, what we're seeing is our defence is investing quite heavily in automated vehicles in hostile terrains. And in Australia in particular, there's a translation of the research that's happening for defence purpose into commercial applications as well. So we're seeing that, you know, there is that translation of government research moving into more commercial application.
Could I just, while you're with us, there's also a question about job losses, effectively drivers, saying the prospect of millions of drivers being replaced. You know, how do you convince planners, politicians, and the public? But you actually said, Rita, that you hadn't had job losses, certainly in in the mining sector, anyway.
Yeah, so what we're seeing as a lesson from that is that there has been no net job losses. People have been redeployed into other areas servicing that industry or other roles within those organisations. Remembering they're large organisations that can absorb and redeploy people. In Australia, and I think it's reported globally, there is a shortage of drivers. Whether it's taxi drivers, bus drivers, and heavy vehicle drivers. There's also an issue with retaining these people because of the type of role that they have. And I think there is an opportunity, particularly with greater levels of automation and maybe a better job environment that they work in, that maybe we'll be able to address the retention issue around that sector. I think one of the things we focus a lot on drivers and job losses, but there's other allied businesses and support services that will be affected as well, the administration. And we haven't talked about heavy vehicles very much, but with the automated trucks, what we're seeing is that these companies are actually becoming freight forwarders. They're moving freight as well as developing their technology. So the business model around who moves freight is changing as well. And I think that that's something to look at, the impacts and also the reskilling that's required.
Okay, thank you. We're really running out of time, have run out of time, shall I say, but maybe I could just ask you all a question just to finish up. If we're talking about international cooperation, it may be something you've already said, it probably is something you've already said, but where do you see the most potential for cooperation, particularly with the European Union? Where do you feel that you can either learn something from the EU or they from you, or that you can learn together? So maybe we can start with Mr. Moon in South Korea.
Yes, the international collaboration and cooperation we need, as I already mentioned, that we're trying to think about how we improve or how we expand the global market together. Okay, that's the target, and also how we are trying to deal with this kind of traffic problems in the worldwide. How we deal with the decrease our congestion the problems, the safety problems, as well as environmental problems. So that's why we have to the internet collaboration project trying to have some kind of the horizon or the something some European project. We're trying to make it together for the targeting. That's what I'm saying. Some kind of some technology to be the merged together to improve our typical problems on the transportation side.
So we share
congestion and
problems.
safety and
Yes.
environmental problems.
Yeah. Mr. Lam in Singapore.
Greedy, and I'll say that there are three areas. The first area obviously is standards, coming together to share how could we have an international standards. That's one. Safety is paramount. I think sharing safety practices, ensuring or different roles of stakeholders like government, how we can play the role of ensuring safety. I think that's another. And the third area is public acceptability. Thank you.
Okay, important. And Mr. Kuzumaki in Japan.
So I think for automated driving, it is necessary to use the data. So interface of the data is very important. So we think we should cooperate or international standard for data format or data interface is very important, I think.
Okay, and Jane Lappin in the States?
Yes, I'm going to take an institutional tact on this question. The US and the EU have twinning agreements that allow us to work across borders on shared research projects, learning by taking the same question and learning from different cases and different types of deployment in the different context. If we can do much more of that, of course, safety assurance, but also traffic performance, vehicle performance, intersection and interactions with human and vulnerable road users. By expanding the institutional framework that exists to do more twinned research programs, we will all learn that much more and more richly.
And of course, the Horizon Europe projects that will be the calls for projects which are about to be issued. I think there is an international element in there. You know, everybody's being encouraged to work in a more international way. So there will be a lot more opportunities at EU level. So Rita, what about from your perspective in Australia?
Well, I think I concur with all of the comments that have been made, particularly around collaborating around standards. We can't just have an Australian standard. We are in a global marketplace in this sector. I think safety assurance is the other one. We've talked about lots of test beds and test facilities, but I think if we had uniform tests that could be translated into globally, that we commit that, you know, the tests, they pass tests in a particular country and we accept that that result can be translated. So then we only tailor local condition testing in our own countries. And finally, I think the access to data. Data is critical to this sector. We need to understand how data can be made available, and we can't just ask for all the data. We have to be pragmatic about that, and we need to have industry around the table with regulators and with governments. And I think that that is a gap currently with some of the groups that are formed, the international groups. They're either government or they're industry, but there's no, so maybe that is an opportunity to bring the big global industry players together in one of these groups that the regulators are in and internationally.
Okay, well, that's a very good point to finish on, something to look into for the future. Thank you all very much indeed for your thoughts, and thank you for joining us, particularly if it's been late at night for some of you. So we're really, really very grateful, and it's been so interesting hearing what you're all doing, and a really great insight into some of the projects and all the work that you're doing. So thank you very much. And thank you for your questions. We are coming to the end of day 2. There will be networking available until 1800 CET this evening. There's still the virtual exhibition if you haven't had a chance to have a look at it. Tomorrow is going to be different because we are going to be splitting into breakout groups. So we're looking into more detail at some of the areas of research and innovation that we've been talking about. Those groups start at 9 in the morning. It's going to be a busy day. I'll be back here, it won't be until 5:05 in the evening, 17:05 CET, for a wrap-up. So we're really going to kind of pull together all the ends of the whole thing and in a plenary session at the end of the day. So have a very good rest of the day. Thank you very much for being with us. I hope you've learnt something and enjoyed some of the discussions, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you.